All right, before we get into Sinestro Core War, here's a couple listener questions. The first one, Gucci Summers on TikTok, says Scarlet Witch is one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe. But Quicksilver, they're twins. What happened to Quicksilver? It's kind of a funny question.
Raising that.
What do you think?
So I've got less knowledge on this, so I'll just go with I'm not really sure regarding comics, but I can say at least with the MCU, there is a reason I could give an answer for that, which is she was exposed to the Mind Stone during the testings and had kind of the witch background as it was. No, the Mind Stone released both of their powers, right?
I think it did, yeah.
What the
they
case,
experimented with both of them on that.
But as we saw, she had the thing when she was a kid with the probability spell or whatever Agatha said that she used before that. So she already kind of had a background there and whatever the heck was going on there with the witchcraft. So that's my answer for the MCU. But as far as the comic thing goes, I don't know. And I even went as far as to try to like look it up and see if there was an answer. And I realized the internet's broken because I typed in a ton of different variations and every single article that kept popping up for results was WandaVision. It's like, no, I don't want WandaVision lore. I need comics lore. And I couldn't find anything. So,
yeah. Well, Quicksilver's barely used even in the comics. Like, I don't know of one single significant thing he has done. He doesn't have a single comic series as much, from what I'm aware of. Like, The Flash has a ton of comic series. They have the same powers. But I kind of have a thing with speedsters in general. I've said it before, but they are just overpowered in general to the point where it's a struggle for them to have a good written story because they should be that powerful. Someone who should be able to move that fast should be able to do just as much damage as Wanda does, I think. Because, whenever they're facing just like simple little robberies that could run across the world in a split second, but when the bad guys are about to punch them, that's like they're in a normal boxing match and somehow they get hit still. It doesn't make any sense. They should never get hit. They should be able to go anywhere at any time in a second, and it's just that's how it should be, but that's not. And especially with Quicksilver, who's supposed to have the same powers as the Flash, doesn't have any attention in the comics. So he did get gypped. He did get that, so I'll give that to Gucci.
I was going to ask, does he have any background in his comic lore close to the Flash in terms of like accessing another dimension or turning back time or anything like that? Does he have any crazy story like that?
Not from what I'm aware of. I haven't heard anything about that.
Okay.
So no speed force, I don't know, no time travel abilities. I've never seen it. If any of you out there have a reference for us, please send it over on TikTok or Instagram. All right, interesting. Another question involving Wanda comes from Chase on TikTok. He says, if Wanda hadn't gotten rid of almost all the mutants in House of M, do you think there would be a better story? Do you think there'd be better storylines for the X-Men? Good question. What do you think?
I would imagine so. My quick answer would be yes. I feel like if they didn't lose 90% of their mutants, there'd be much better stories to work with and a lot better just pick of the litter to go off of. But this is coming directly out of my ass because I don't think I've read any X-Men stories that take place. Well, no, I read Avengers vs. X-Men, so I have read a couple that take place after House of N, but I haven't read a ton. So I can't really say, well, they haven't been that good. They haven't had a lot of good stories to tell. The only way I can say that is because of things I've heard and seen. I've seen a lot of people complain about the stories within the X-Men. A lot up until they dropped the whole House of X and Power of X, and that's when I first started hearing people being positive about X-Men stories again. But that's my rookie knowledge on it.
My quick answer is I don't think there'd be better storylines because you have the opportunity now, and you have had the opportunity before House of M to do any kind of mutant story you want. But House of M allowed an era where there was such an important purpose in finding a new mutant, and it led to stuff like the Second Coming and Messiah War when Hope was born, and it just gave them this super big conflict facing extinction that they wouldn't have had without House of M. And that led to Second Coming. That's one of my favorite X-Men stories. It's dope. And a lot a lot of what the X-Force and like a lot of what people were doing were because people were after this last mutant. So that made a ton of different villains, a ton of different villain squads that they had to face, and it even gave us Avengers versus X-Men. Like, hope was such a big part of the future of the X-Men after House of M. So
yeah, I changed my answer. No.
Yeah. It's getting crazy. Hickman's got X-Men stuff the past few years, and it's getting crazy to where I'm not digging it that much. I liked the era after House of M, but All right, let's move on to our last question from Ryan Hill on TikTok. He says, if Batman were to straight up pick his successor, who do you think it should be and why?
Do you want to start off here?
All right. Who do I think Batman would pick, or who do I think he should pick? So two different answers. I think he should pick. I think Damian fills the shoes perfectly because he is a Wayne, and he is just as badass as his dad. Sometimes he seems like more of a badass. And he finally did just give in to the no-killing rule. So I think he would honor his dad's no-killing rule, and I think he would be the best Batman successor with all his training. He had the League of Shadows. He cares about the Wayne legacy. It's a blood relative. So I'm going to do that. But I think Batman would pick Nightwing because I think he trusts Nightwing more than his own son, basically.
For sure. Okay. Nice. I kind of went different with this. So I think he should pick Nightwing. I think that's the best replacement. He's literally been called the best leader by the Justice League. Like, he was pretty much donned that, like, after Superman, he's the best leader they've ever met. Ra's al Ghul straight up gave him the title the detective. He earned his respect to that degree that, like, Ra's al Ghul gave him his flowers in that regards as being a Batman replacement. But I almost think that Bruce wouldn't want to because of a couple things with their background. But one, I'll make an argument against it. I think Nightwing is the best pick. But I don't know if Batman really wants him to be Batman, personally. He had a line to Wonder Woman when Wonder Woman says, yeah, and you brought him in so he could be like you. And he says, no, I brought him in so he wouldn't be like me. And so part of me thinks that he wouldn't want him to kind of continue this coping mechanism that Batman really is for Bruce and his trauma. Part of me thinks that he might hesitate in naming Dick as Batman because of that reason. And so to continue this devil's advocate with it, I thought of Jason. I thought maybe Batman would try and pick Jason, maybe, because he believes that maybe this could save him from killing people like he does. Maybe being Batman, wearing the symbol, having people look up to him as Batman could maybe spark that in Jason to finally bring him back and to stop killing people and to honor the Batman mantle. But the only way this works is if Bruce is dead. So get to it, Bruce. But that was kind of devil's advocate to kind of give a different answer out there.
Yeah, I like that. Roll the dice on Red Hood because he has shown he could trust him sometimes. But then he starts killing again. It kind of goes back and forth with him, which I really like. Cool. All right, good question. What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to Why So Sidious podcast, where we cover Marvel, DC, Star Wars, all the fandom properties. I am Jeremy. The handsome gentleman with me is David. And today's episode is a comic book review on a classic Green Lantern story called Sinestro Corps War. But before that, give us a follow on X, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Why So Sidious Pod. And if this is your first time listening, we've also covered comics like Flashpoint, Children's Crusade, Jonathan Hickman's Avengers Run, and some others. And our annual Cities just dropped. It's Best Actor, Actress, Best Humor, Biggest Disappointment, and a bunch of categories like that for the Nerd Fandom Year of 2023. And with that out of the way, let's get to our main topic, Sinestro Corps War. One of the first comics I've ever read, and David's first time reading any Green Lantern comic, I believe?
Yes, very first time.
Okay, so how was your first trip into the world of the Lanterns?
It was a lot. In a good way, in a lot of ways. It's just so there's so much new lore that I'm not familiar with. Really, I'm only familiar with Jon Stewart from the Justice League animated show, the cartoon growing up. Hal Jordan, I'm somewhat familiar with because he's in a lot of big runs and a little bit of Guy Gardner. But I don't know who the hell Kyle Rayner is. The only other ones I know are dead now, apparently. Abin Sur and then Tomar Ray's dad, which I thought that was him until they said he was his son. I was like, oh, man, he's dead too. So, yeah, I'm super unfamiliar with all this. So it was a lot to learn and a lot to try to kind of put together for the background because there's a lot of stuff they bring up that references to past events. But it was awesome. And it's just entertaining because there's so much stuff. There's so much different range of storytelling that they get into, and it's very creative. Obviously the rings do what you can think up of, so there's just a massive potential for creativity in the drawings and everything. But all around, I'd say it was a fun read. It was a really fun read getting into the Lanterns.
Cool. It's funny because we just we talk about how the Hickman Avengers reading we've been doing has a lot of the Star Wars feel, especially for Infinity. Now, this does take place in space, but I do not at all get any kind of Star Wars feel from this.
No.
Somehow.
No, I didn't either.
Still very galactic, yeah. So, yeah, that's cool. All right, well, I'm going to get into a little of the background to catch some of the audience up on some things that happened before Sinestro Cold War that play a role. If you don't want to hear that kind of stuff, you're already familiar, you could check our little timestamps in the description and skip it. But what I'm about to explain comes from stories like Crisis on Infinite Earths, way back in the 80s, Emerald Twilight in the 90s, Return of Superman, Infinite Crisis, and some earlier Green Lantern issues leading up. Because there's stuff like the fall and rebirth of Hal Jordan, which plays a little role. There's some background on Sinestro, Superboy Prime, Cyborg Superman, which I felt like they were pretty random characters when I first read this story. We're kind of caught in the middle of this overarching story in DC. There's a ton going on. So basically back in the 90s, we'll jump back to Crisis in the 80s once we get to Superboy Prime. But in the 90s, Hal Jordan was infected by Parallax. This is the entity of yellow rings who harness fear for their energy. But Hal's hometown, Coast City, was completely destroyed, and Cyborg Superman played a role in that back in the 90s. And this is millions dead, people he knew and loved, where he grew up. And so that trauma allowed that fear of Parallax to seep in and possess Hal Jordan. And he went on a rampage, killed a ton of Green Lanterns, tried killing the Guardians, fought Cyborg Superman. Eventually he was stopped and killed, but his spirit actually became another DC character, the Spectre. In a way, the Spectre saved his life. He knew that Hal Jordan was possessed. It wasn't really him. We don't have to get into Spectre, but Hal's physical body was preserved even though he died. And this is actually in the time when Kyle Rayner was recruited, and I believe he was the very last Lantern, and there was like one more ring left, and they recruited him to kind of save the day, and he played a big role into defeating this possessed Hal Jordan. So that's where Kyle Rayner plays in. He's kind of like a messiah for the Green Lanterns at that time. Yeah. So a decade later, literally 10 years in real life, Hal Jordan's not a part of the comics until Geoff Johns took him up with a Green Lantern Rebirth in 2004. So yeah, he was not there for a whole decade. And basically Hal was able to will his soul back into his body after he was the Spectre for so long, and they had to defeat Parallax. And we found out that Sinestro played a huge role in allowing Parallax to influence Hal's mind. And for Sinestro's role in that, he was sent to Cord, the antimatter universe, where he was basically imprisoned or exiled into this antimatter universe. But he was able to find these creatures and forge the first yellow ring, and he secretly began recruiting Sinestro Corps members and building an army. Because before this, green was the only color.
Oh. Holy crap. Okay.
And, yeah. So all this new color stuff came, like, building up to the Blackest Night. It added a ton of lore. It's why I love the series so much. Ton of mythology with the rings. But so like they're doing their space stuff, even whoever like is fighting their crime wherever they are. Every now and then you'd see a yellow ring pop up, like randomly, semi-frequently, not that frequently. But it was cool because you didn't know what the hell was going on when you're reading this, and all of a sudden, like, even Batman, at one point, just fighting crime in Gotham, had a yellow ring attached to him, and he was chosen for his ability to instill fear. That's how the rings choose. But his willpower, which is the power of the Green Lanterns, his willpower overrides the fear stuff. So the ring, actually, he willed the ring off of him, so he didn't. Kind of that would have made him succumb to fear and probably get all villainy. But that was cool. And that was in the middle of a Green Lantern series. He didn't have anything to do with it, but it's a fun little thing that Geoff Johns kind of does in his stories, is give you a cool little Easter egg that doesn't make sense until like months later.
Damn.
Because in this one, they like talk about it in the first chapter, right? Batman discusses, he's like, yeah, what about this yellow ring that attached to me? Like, oh, they're building an army, blah, blah, blah. So that was pretty much what that was referring to. A couple more things. Cyborg Superman and Superboy Prime. So Cyborg Superman, like I said, he fought Hal when he was possessed by Parallax. Hal whooped his ass. Cyborg Superman ended up in the far reaches of space, where he started learning about the prophecy of the Blackest Night and building an army of Manhunter androids, not to be confused with anything related to Martian Manhunter. This was like a group, an army that the Guardians created. I keep saying the Guardians. We're talking about a group of little blue, very powerful people who are in charge of the Green Lantern Corps. They built these things as androids to do what the Green Lanterns do, but they went all Ultron and decided the best way is to kill all sentient life, so they did a whole massacre that is a big kind of conspiracy that people don't know is true or not, that the Guardians are blamed for, and that plays a role into some cool stories. But anyway, that's kind of where Cyborg Superman was, because the Guardians really want to go find him because they found out that he was finding out about prophecies and recruiting manhunters, and after Hal Jordan's rebirth, he had another run-in with him, so he was able to tell the Guardians about some of that. So that's where he is before the story starts. And then Superboy Prime, super interesting character. He came into DC way back in Crisis on Infinite Earths in the 80s. The Anti-Monitor actually destroyed his universe. His universe is cool. It's interesting because it represented our universe. Me and you as people, human beings. He lived on a planet that didn't have superheroes. He would read comics just like us about these DC characters. He loved them. But when he was sucked into our world after the Crisis on Infinite Earth stuff, he came at a time when a public opinion was really shifting because, like, things were getting dark. Wonder Woman had just killed Maxwell Lord on live television. You had the Hal murder spree as Parallax for a while. Bane just broke Batman's back, and the Jean Paul Batman temporarily took up the mantle and was really crazy and violent. So all these heroes are like, you know, they're getting violent and dark, and he likes the Golden Age style where they stand for the righteous perfection thing. So he was disgusted in all this, and that plays into Infinite Crisis, which takes place right before this, and Superboy Prime became a gnarly villain because he's Kryptonian. He had powers. He was the only powered guy on his planet. But super gnarly. He had some crazy fights, as he did in this one with that guy Sodom Yacht. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But by the end of Infinite Crisis, he was beaten and imprisoned. That's where we start with Sinestro Corps War, right? He's imprisoned in that Red Sun, surrounded by a bunch of Green Lanterns to make sure he doesn't get out. So that's where those characters and some backstory, all that. I've been talking a lot. How do you feel about this backstory? Did it fill any holes you needed filled? I could be good at that kind of thing.
Maybe. Yeah, it did. Like, I wish I heard all that before reading this, actually, because one of my nitpicks with this issue was they referenced so many things that I just had no idea what they were talking about. Again, I didn't understand Spectre. The only Spectre knowledge I have is from Crisis on Infinite Earths, the CW episode, where Arrow gets taken over by the Spectre at the end. So Arrow dies, and he is now the Spectre. But yeah, I had no idea about any of this. Kyle Rayner, Sodom Yacht, the Ion, I think the name of the superpowered Green Lantern that didn't use a ring. I didn't even fully understand that one. There was just a lot of stuff with it. I knew kind of the background with Parallax. I had heard about the Hal Jordan being possessed deal, but Superboy Prime, Superman, Cyborg Superman, all this stuff, I was totally lost on it. So it did take away from the overall story for me because it's just so many times I had no idea what they were talking about.
And you've seen Reign of the Supermen, right? Where after Superman dies, a bunch of kind of other Supermen show up, because that's an animated show that was pretty well received. I haven't read the comic or seen that show, but I got the gist of it through reading what came before and after. Actually,
I started that. I think there's an animated movie on it, or show or movie. There is an animated project, and I did start it, but it was one of those where I didn't finish it the first watch, and then I just forgot to go back to it.
Yeah, I felt like the movie was kind of slow, kind of boring, but yeah, it's hard to get me with animated stuff. But that's where Cyborg Superman really originated, anyway. Okay, let's jump into the story. Got to give credit to the writers and artists real quick. This story goes alternating chapters between two series running parallel through the conflict here. It's the Green Lantern series written by Geoff Johns, and then there's the Green Lantern Corps series written by Dave Gibbons and art by Patrick Gleason. Now, I have a question here, because did this art look familiar to you at all? Because there is a story I know you've read that had mostly Patrick Gleason's art.
So Patrick Gleason, he must have been on the Dave. Did you say he was with the Dave Gibbons stories?
Yeah, that's for the Green Lantern Corps stuff.
There was some artwork that looked familiar, but I couldn't say what it was. Avengers vs. X-Men? I don't know. Oh, that's Marvel.
No, he did the Batman. No, they do that. They switch. But Patrick Gleason was on the Batman and Robin New 52 stuff, like almost all of it. So those faces and that style looked familiar.
Yeah, and I like that.
Yeah, it's okay. I would much prefer the Green Lantern series artists, Ivan Reis or Ivan Rice. I think he's one of the best artists. He's really good. Mm-hmm. All right, so give me a couple things that stood out that you liked, or a couple gripes. What just overall thoughts?
So I already touched on the lack of knowledge, which again isn't fully. That's not a fault of the run. That's a fault of me being unprepared and go into this story. So if you had read that stuff, it's not a fault of the run at all. So that's not much of a nitpick. I will say I liked the art the majority of the time, but it wasn't my favorite. Like you said there, I liked some of it, but there were a good amount of times in the second half where I couldn't decipher what panel came next or what panel came first on some of the pages. And there were some scenes where I just legit couldn't really tell what was happening. I was looking at it for a while and I can't tell if he's shooting somebody or who's being hit here or what's going on. So there was a fair amount of times where the panels were a little messy. One of the standouts, I really enjoyed the ominous foreshadowing of the Blackest Night prophecy. That hooked me instantly. I was fully in on that. But it also leads into a nitpick where I wish there was more regarding the Blackest Night prophecy, and maybe an explanation at least to the Black Lantern. Now, I know they teased it at the end, and obviously that's going to lead into a bigger story, but it was so cool at the beginning that I wish I could have gotten more out of that story. And then another standout, big standout, I like Hal Jordan. I don't know what it is. I find myself gravitating to his character. I like him a lot, and I loved his story in this. Everything he overcame, even not knowing his past in detail with Parallax, but his dynamics with the different Earthmen of the Green Lantern Corps, and it was kind of paralleled with Captain America at points and the Avengers, with the disdain that other galactic leaders had of Captain America and the Avengers. That's kind of how the Green Lanterns treat the Earthmen, and they have this disrespect, but there are those who know that they can hold it down and who know what they're capable of. So I just, every aspect of Hal Jordan, the part which we'll get into, but Coast City?
What's
the name of this? Coast City. Standing behind him, that was a super cool moment, which again we'll get into. But everything Hal Jordan, I just really loved.
Yeah, me too. He's a solid character. So for my positives, I love the art. I really like the stakes. Like it's high stakes, so you're invested. I love the extra non-Lantern characters like Superboy, Prime, Anti-Monitor, Cyborg, Superman. Um, I love the first issue. I love how it starts because for me, the middle of it gets a little hazy and hard to like really. It didn't like grab me through the middle. I was dragging on through the middle. I love the first issue. I love the last issue, and yeah, just kind of like the beginning and end stuff. I love how they rewrite the Book of Oa to allow lethal force. I thought that was sick.
So dope.
And again, I like the Blackest Night stuff. My gripes, I said one of them, the middle of it gets messy, but the battles itself, they all felt so messy, and it was just like an all-out brawl, and it just got a little too much action in a way, because I would have preferred more actual storytelling, and action's cool, but I would have preferred more like isolated tactical action scenes that meant a little more, not just an all-out mosh pit. Like that's what it felt like, just meaningless mosh pit for so much of this story.
Totally. Yeah.
Especially with the Justice League, because they were brought into this story just to show their face, just to say the Justice League is here. They did nothing significant, and I would have loved to see them or collaborate with the Green Lanterns more and be of more significance.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
So those are my gripes there, because it was...
The mess on the page, like you said there, I'm totally with you. It would have been way better to get isolated things because... Again, I would stare at these pages, and while I'm trying to like figure out what's coming next or what order things are in, I'd notice like, oh, that's a dope creative kill shot right there. But it's hidden behind all this other stuff going on. It's like that should be like the center of the page here. That little image right there, that's a crazy kill shot. But yeah.
Totally. Despite the mosh pit stuff, there are some really cool like small pictures of action. There's a couple sprinkled in there that I really appreciated. So the first issue, it's like a special. It's not Green Lantern. It's not a part of either series. It's a special one issue to start the story. How did the first issue work for you? First Lantern story, did it do its job and draw you in?
Yes, it did. It did. I think this one and the one after really hooked me. But this did enough to draw me in. I had a couple issues with it too, but the attack on Oa happened in this prologue, right? Like towards the end of this first time. Yeah. And it was pretty crazy. Like because they were just getting headshot. Like yellow lanterns were just sniping them from deep, and you just see these green lanterns panicking as they're just getting picked off one by one. So yeah, I loved that. It definitely pulled me in. I just got to say at the beginning, how Reverse Flash is in this, right? At the start of it, I think running around, and how Jordan just catches him with the chain. And it goes back to your speedster thing there where I was like, how the hell did Hal just catch that dude? He just caught him with the chain. Yeah. Like, how? Right. Yeah. I did have a question for you. Oh, sorry. Real quick. The 52. So Cyborg, Superman, and the Guardians are talking here, and they keep mentioning the 52 and the 51 other universes. And I've never known this, but so does that mean that when the new 52, that's literally the 52nd universe? Like it's a new universe in the grand scheme of things? Is that what that means?
That's kind of how I took it. Like it was almost a reboot for DC, and I took it as this is our new universe that we're going with, because there was a lot of changes made, and now on modern, like nowadays, it's confusing. They say it is canon, but so many things were changed. Like Two-Face, I mean, just one example of many, was given a way different origin story from getting acid thrown on his face in a courtroom, which I hated that. That was in the Batman and Robin series. Wait, no, that might have been. But yeah, like just stuff like that, random things. Random villains are being changed, heroes are being changed. But yeah, I think that's what it was. And I had a note here on that 52 thing, because I didn't know that either. I don't even know if I grasped that before when I read this story, but it totally gave us like the structure of the DC multiverse situation.
Kinda,
right?
Yeah.
He says, like this Earth Prime that we're dealing with, I don't know what they call it, Earth 1 or something, is like the focal point of all 52 universes, and there's 51 other universes with their own Earth and their own universe. But if our universe gets destroyed, it'll set a chain reaction off and destroy the whole multiverse. Yeah. So I thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
And then now you realize why villains always just attack Earth.
It does. does explain
But
that.
the Reverse Flash, so he played no role, but I actually loved that part of the issue, just seeing the Justice League take down the Reverse Flash, who this one issue was drawn by Ethan Van Sciver, probably my single favorite. He's a gangster with the pen, and I love his art with the Justice League and the Flash. There was some cool shots of him like beating the shit out of the Justice League with like 80 punches in one little page. So I liked that. I liked how they discussed the ring, so built on that kind of lore. But the first freaking 2 pages I absolutely love. It's just Sinestro talking about his motivations and why he's going to do what he's doing. And I just love that. Love the first couple pages for that reason.
Yeah, it sets the villain up great. It set up Sinestro and the Sinestro Corps by the end of it, where they're just straight up murdering everybody. Like, it does a really great job at establishing this villain, like this evil side of the story that we're getting into.
Yeah. It's like the opening monologue in the first Avenger movie when that guy's talking to Thanos about what they're going to do to the humans on Earth and stuff like that. Sort of. Just a little more drawn out, a little better here. They keep going. They got the foreboding stuff, the prophecy stuff they're talking about. Like you said, they get attacked while they're just sitting at lunch. So casualties are racking up. And you see Superboy Prime escaped from his prison. So I'm guessing a yellow ring seeked him out, gave him a little extra power that he needed to bust out of that prison. And that's scary, especially if you've seen the damage he causes in Infinite Crisis. And then Sinestro finds Kyle Rayner. Talks a bunch of shit, makes him get all vulnerable to some fear, talking about how his girlfriend was stuffed into a fridge in pieces, which is a thing that happened to his girlfriend. All that stuff. So that fear allowed Parallax to possess Kyle Rayner. What else happened here? So the Guardians, you see Ced and Ganthet. So the Guardians, the blue people I talked about, they're pretty much dickheads. All of them are kind of mean, except Ganthet and Ced. Ganthet's the one with long hair. Ced is the bald one. But they're kind of rogue Guardians that do way more for the good guys, like directly, and they believe emotions are essential to life, whereas the other Guardians shun emotions, which is why they tried to make an army of androids. But Ced and Ganthet are the cool Guardians, and they will play a role throughout this series after Sinestro Corps War. But they're the 2 important Guardians, the only ones I know the name of. But they're freaking there.
Well, didn't they kind of like they made a notion that they don't accept that they even have names because that's almost a part of emotion and attaching to things, and so they were like the only 2 who were actually like acknowledging that they even had names or something. But I love this side of the story. I mean, it's kind of the Jedi Sith deal, which we're always so against with the Jedi. It's one of the big problems of the Jedi is ignoring emotion. So I love this whole thing throughout the run.
Yeah, I like the Guardians too. They're just very mythological, so it's always fun to tune into what they're talking about. All right, and then, so like I said, for me, it gets kind of hazy. I think the next chapter or 2 is pretty good. You know, we got things, the casualties keep racking up. The Guardians keep talking about these forbidden chapters out of the Book of Oa, which is their kind of Bible. You got Hal confronting Parallax. You got Sinestro coming to his hometown, his home planet of Korrigar to rally. Well, he comes to this rally where people are kind of getting behind his daughter, Saranic Natu, who they once all turned their back on. Yeah. So they all shunned her for a while because she joined the Green Lanterns for a while, and these are yellow people. But Sinestro comes home to fight her, and seems like he wants to rule the planet again. But as you saw, instead he actually wants it to look like she beat him. So he whipped her ass, dropped her to the planet, but he fled. So people kind of thought that she won the fight. For some reason, he wants them to rally behind her. And we move on. Hal's kind of getting dominated by Parallax. We see that Cyborg, Superman Prime, the Anti-Monitor are all like with the Yellow Lantern Corps. So that's Sketch, the Anti-Monitor's freaking powerful. Although in this story, he is like young or something. He's not as powerful as his Crisis on Infinite Earth days.
Oh, okay.
And one of the cool things that happens here is Cyborg Superman expresses his deep desire for the Anti-Monitor to fully kill him after they have succeeded in this war, because Cyborg Superman lives a life of torture. He actually wants to end his existence. He can't die because he's got this Cyborg Superman thing going on. Anti-Monitor agrees. He's going to kill him at the end of this. And Henshaw says thank you enough to he even tears up. So it's like he really wants to go.
Yeah, that was intense.
Yeah. He says, I've been burned, dismembered. He says, my wife was driven crazy after my accident, and she killed herself, and that same accident killed all my friends. Like, he's just not having a good life. And now I'm already on chapter 4 on my notes here, so this is the middle where it's just like a bunch of fighting. That's all it is, a bunch of fighting. I don't know if you have anything to say about the next few chapters.
Yeah. So we're about to roll into chapter. That's okay. That makes sense. So that was just chapter 3 with with Superman and all that stuff going on. Okay, that was in. Yeah. So I will say, I did want to know, how did Abin Sur die? And if it's a long answer, we can skip over it. They mentioned the Blackest Night prophecy got Abin Sur killed. Is there like an important background to that, or is that a super lengthy story?
They touch on it at one point in the middle of Geoff Johns' run. They do it's called a Secret Origins. It's like a 6-issue retelling of the origin of Hal Jordan meeting Abin Sur, getting the Green Lantern, becoming the Green Lantern for the first time. And in that story, I remember more background with Abin Sur finding out about this prophecy, because he did die. Remember, just like in the Ryan Reynolds movie, he died crashing on Earth to give Hal Jordan the ring. So that's what happened in the comics too.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I didn't like chapter 2 at all. I thought that was one of the weaker issues. Actually, it was kind of meh for me. It was the Dave Gibbons one, but I do like there's some brutality in this runs. One of the scenes where the Green Lanterns pull up and there's just floating body parts all over the place. It's like, holy crap! Like, it does a solid job at showing the Sinestro Corps being just absolutely brutal and savage murderers.
Yeah.
So I did enjoy that. Had no idea Saronic Natu was his daughter, was Sinestro's daughter. No idea.
Yeah. Yeah. She has a super cool arc. I'm not going to get into it, but in the rebirth era of DC, she has a really cool thing going on. Anyway, but yeah, we'll keep moving on. So, Chapter 5, Set and Ganthet are charged with acting with emotion and banished from the Council. Now, this kind of breaks their chains from all that dogma that they had to follow with the Guardians. Then they start doing their own thing after this, for the foreseeable future. Then we got Hal, using the Yellow Rings to gain an upper hand against Parallax, Kal Rayner. And when he gets the Yellow Rings on, he just blasting Sinestro Corps members. That was pretty cool. The Anti-Monitor is like dissecting or doing something to Ion, the big green entity, kind of the green version of Parallax. And almost killed Guy Gardner until Ion busts out through a wall, escapes, whatever was happening to him. I don't know. Again, something that was just confusing.
Yes.
But yeah, so they all escape. And then this is when the Guardians announce they've rewritten the Book of Oa to do this rule, right? So we're dealing with chapter after chapter of the Yellows just slaughtering the Green, and when the Green goes for a kill shot, their rings don't allow it. It's really frustrating. They're not allowed to use lethal force. And after 4 issues of that, they finally decide to rewrite their Bible to authorize the use of lethal force, which is so sick. Because right when that happens, they all get the word, and the Green Lanterns start killing Yellow, and the Yellow's like, oh, what? Like, you guys are not supposed to be killing us. So now they're starting to get scared, and the tables are starting to turn.
Yeah, there's like 3 different, maybe 4 different moments throughout in multiple issues. Because there's battles happening all over the place. It's not just one battle. Like, there's 3 or 4 different battles going on. And every time that one of those groups realize they rewrote the rules, holy crap, we can kill. Like, it happened 3 or 4 times during this run, and every single time it happened, it felt dope because it's just the realization of, oh, we have a chance. Like, we actually have a fighting chance here. We can do stuff. And because we saw multiple Green Lanterns try to kill, including Sinestro's daughter at one point. They said, screw this, and they try to kill, and the ring just straight up stops them. and disables their power and doesn't even let them use the ring anymore. Like, they just have to get carried around now by the other Green Lanterns. And I had no idea that was a part of the lore. That's why I texted you. I was like, you can't even kill with a Green Lantern ring? I had no idea that was a thing. That was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was so sick. First time I read it, I was like, let's go. Get away from the status quo of the no killing rule.
Right.
Can't all have that rule.
Nah. People gotta die.
Let's see. So some of the bigger battles in space include the Lanterns defending their sentient planet called Mogo. Because if this thing dies, rings wouldn't be able to find replacements. Because when a Green Lantern dies, his ring goes off of their body and goes and finds a replacement, somebody who can use willpower, or whatever, have a lot of willpower. So that's all good. That's a big battle for them in space, for the core. We learn a little bit about Sodom Yacht, and apparently he's Kryptonian. That's crazy. In one of the pages it says he's talking about how our red sun is the angry eye of Ra, who doomed our ancestors on Krypton. So he himself tells us he's Kryptonian, which is dope, because he has a massive display of power later that makes more sense that he's Kryptonian, because when I first read it, must have missed that. And I was just like, why is this random dude I've never heard about just super powerful? But yeah, there's your answer.
Sorry, my thing just cut out a bunch there. But were you talking about Sodom Yacht?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was super interesting. Realizing the yellow sun and the power up and everything there. So you've never experienced that character before?
Never. He's super random.
Okay. Hey, the delay's gone. Yay.
Nice. Yeah, and this is when it starts getting better for me, because then, or actually it was the previous chapter, but you find out that the main target of the Sinestro Corps is Earth, which of course we just explained why Earth is so important. But I think this is when they show the Justice League and Sinestro's on Earth, so it feels way more like you're attacking something we care about, and that's when I was really drawn back into the story. Straight up. One of my favorite little shots, it's not that significant, but Sinestro tells Hal, when they're talking shit to each other, that Parallax is at his brother's house. So without hesitation, Hal just, boom, passes the sound barrier, flying towards his brother's house, and just launches through Parallax off of their porch. And it reminded me of Superman taking out Zod after he was threatening his mom, just out of nowhere, super fast, takes out the villain. I loved the art there, and they fly freaking hundreds of miles away and land somewhere to continue that fight. But it was sick seeing that green streak come through the porch, kind of destroying part of the porch as he just takes Parallax out. I love that shot.
Yeah, that was sick. That was a super cool shot, and then it led into a super weird shot with Hal getting inside the body of Kyle Rayner, which then went to him and Kyle chilling inside the body of Parallax as he's trying to drag him out, and then they actually punch their arms and literally claw their way out of Kyle Rayner's body, but it's Kyle and Hal. It was just a super weird concept of just them being inside of Kyle's body, technically, but yeah, it was interesting artwork.
Yeah. Not a super graspable concept. He just tore his body up to find his new body. What, did he just birth a new body? But anyway, that's fine. They defeat Parallax, and Ganthet and Zed, those two Guardians, come with their lanterns and imprison Parallax. And I was happy with that, because I would have much rather Kyle Rayner played a bigger role in this story overall. I didn't like him as Parallax. I thought his dialogue was terribly cringy. He would just say things like, I'm not even going to try. But anyway, everything he said was just it felt like childish villain stuff that I didn't like this Parallax Kyle at all. Yeah, and then, so we move on. Saranic Natu joins the Corps. Kilowog and Arkillo. Arkillo, I think is how you say it. Anyway, two big buff monster dudes. I think they have a pretty cool fight here in Chapter 8. We're grabbing aircraft carriers and dropping it on each other. Kilowog beats his ass, then cuts his finger off to take the ring and the powers away from Arkillo. So that was a pretty cool little brawl, a little nice one-on-one fight there. Mm-hmm. And Anti-Monitor is still kind of attacking, trying to kill Mogo. Then Sodom Sodom Yacht, our random mystery guy, gets blasted by the Anti-Monitor. Should be dead, but he opens his eyes, and they're burning red. And we see his Kryptonian nature coming out here, and then he just goes off. I don't know if he defeats the Anti-Monitor, I forgot, but it was a pretty cool little scene. He was all bloody and torn up with his red eyes. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Oh, and then the Guardians come and fuse Sodom Yacht with Ion. So he gets the Green Lantern powers without having to wear the ring or something like that. Huge power upgrade at a perfect time because Superboy Prime is coming right towards them. And like I said before, if you read Infinite Crisis, he's a scary guy. So Sodom definitely needed a power upgrade, and they have a pretty brutal one-on-one fight. Bloody, visceral.
Yeah, that was sick.
And let's see, I think this is the last chapter. Yeah, then we get to the end of it. There's a lot of more talk about the Blackest Night prophecy. We actually get the full kind of explanation of what it's supposed to be and how this War of Light leads into the Blackest Night. Mm-hmm. I will say the War of Light was built up, and there was really, really cool conflicts, like the Rage of the Red Lanterns after this, stuff with the Orange Lanterns who are pretty unique. But as far as the War of Light go, it's actually a story I think they kind of dropped the ball on. It's called the War of Green Lanterns or something like that. But none of that worked out. Blackest Night is dope, but a lot of the War of Light stuff isn't that great, except for the like I said, the red conflict and the Orange Lantern conflict. I thought were sick that come after this. But straight up, what's cool here, so it's finally a little more tactical as far as this battle with the Anti-Monitor goes, because their plan is to take the Yellow Lantern's planet, similar to Mogo, their sentient kind of planet, get a ton of Green Lanterns to launch giant chains around this whole planet and toss it at the Anti-Monitor. And they all have to put their power together to contain the blast so it doesn't destroy Earth. I think someone said if it's not contained, it could destroy the whole Milky Way galaxy. And that's the kind of power it takes to kill Anti-Monitor. I thought that scene was sick. They pull it off. They throw the planet at them. They contain the energy and defeat the Anti-Monitor.
Yeah, that was dope. That was a dope little sequence there. I really liked right before that, kind of at the start of this issue, which is what I mentioned earlier. I thought it was a super cool moment with the whole Coast City thing where they tell everybody to evacuate. He channels into everybody's TV and tells everybody to leave. And Hal's brothers, we're not leaving anywhere. We trust in you. And we've had this whole thing of Hal having this massive guilt about the stuff in the past when he was taken over by Parallax. He just is burdened by this massive weight. And to see the entire city light green lanterns throughout all the skyscrapers and kind of light up the city to show they had his back to kind of help him overcome. I don't know. It was a little cheesy, but it worked for me. I thought it was a pretty cool moment as far as motivational things go in comics.
Hell yeah, something a little more personal and emotional, which this story lacked.
Mm-hmm.
And the people holding up their green lights, that was kind of a cool, weird little thing there. But so, Superboy Prime, as I said, he had a beef with the Anti-Monitor from Crisis on Infinite Earths, but he tosses that motherfucker's body all the way out into space and just launches him into space, and that comes back to play in the very last page. Sinestro, he's talking about how he loves that the Green Lanterns have authorized lethal force because he's always said no one fears the Green Lanterns. They can't get shit done because everyone knows they're going to survive. No one's going to die. We're going to be fine. So he's a big fan of that. He probably wishes he was still a part of the Green Lanterns now. But that was cool to see him, finding out about that and him liking that. And then we finally get, so when they blew up that planet, it depowered all the yellow. And then you get this really cool fight with Sinestro and Hal and Kyle where they're not using powers. It's just a street fight. And I like a lot of that art there, him getting punched into a glass, and the perspective is I think must be from Hal's point of view, and you see his reflection punching Sinestro, who just smashes into this glass. I thought there was a really cool couple action scenes there, like them breaking pieces of 2x4s over each other's heads and stuff like that. That fight worked for me as a cool little climactic one-on-one brawl with the main villain.
Yeah, that was dope. Gritty. It was gritty. And I just couldn't help but laugh at Super. You said he's a lunatic, and he is. Superboy Prime at one point, when he just lost it, he just got pissed and started killing both sides. Like, he started killing Yellow Lanterns, Green Lanterns, the Anti-Monitor into space. He's just like, you're all pathetic, and just starts raging on everybody, bro. It was hilarious. Like, just killing everybody. But
that's him, dude.
I did have an issue with this issue. Wow. But that is, so we keep turning the pages, and we're just literally undoing the major deaths we just saw with every panel. Like, then we see the Anti-Monitor didn't get killed. He got launched into the or wherever he landed, and he created the Black Lantern. Cyborg Superman, he literally thanked the Lanterns for killing him in that bomb, that shield, because, like you said, he asked the Anti-Monitor to kill him. He's alive, we find out. So everybody who died in the end here, they all ended up being alive, but... So I kind of was a little annoyed by that, but...
Yeah. I will say I got a tiny bit emotional when they found Cyborg Superman's head floating. I don't know if he was actually in a state of death, because if he wasn't actually dead, he shouldn't be satisfied. But I think in some way he was satisfied. He was either dead or dying. I think he knew he was dying. But it was sad, because the Manhunters find his head... and they rebuild him, and you see a close-up of his face, and he just starts crying after they say, oh, okay, we were reading positive life energy, we're reading that he's alive. Brutal. And you see him, basically it's like he got what he wanted, but then he found out they're bringing him back to life, and he can't do anything about it, so he's going to continue living on. So you see that tear drop from his eye, and it's a little heartbreaking for his story. I thought that was pretty rich, but I guess a lot of people did die and come back. That's a Marvel thing. But yeah, destroying that planet by killing the Anti-Monitor, that kind of was the nail in the coffin for the Sinestro people, because now they can't find replacements or something. They're depowered, so the rest of them retreat. A bunch of them get killed, and that's the end of the war. You got a couple things that tease some future stuff. Sed and Ganthet, you see them out in space, and they just create a blue ring of hope. And they agree to assist Hal regarding anything involving the prophecy of the Blackest Night. If that comes to pass, they're going to be there for him. The blue ring of hope is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, the green and the blue help each other. Because if you have a lot of hope, that's going to help your willpower. Like, if you have a ton of willpower and some hope, you're going to really push forward. And that's really cool, because even when they get in the vicinity of each other, it powers up the green rings.
That's dope. And
they do some a very mystical group of lanterns that come out of this in the future. So I really liked that. And then the last thing is, the Anti-Monitor is found by a mysterious voice. I think it must be either Blackhand or Necron, who's kind of the leader of the Black Lanterns in the future. But somebody, you don't see it, you just see his voice saying, they found the Anti-Monitor, and they begin using his body to create a mysterious Black Lantern, because the Anti-Monitor's body is full of crazy anti-energy. So he is that's a super cool character to use to build something like the Black Lanterns, who are anti-life. Those rings attach to dead bodies and bring them back to life. It's like the undead, kind of thing going on. So the Anti-Monitor with all that negative energy, however you want to look at it, I thought that was a sick way for the Black Lanterns for the Black Lantern to get created. So that's obviously a hint towards growing towards the Blackest Night. And so there's your foreshadowing and your ending to the story.
Straight up. See, I didn't know that about how the Black Rings work or anything about that. So I saw the picture of the Black Lantern, and so that's kind of why I was hoping for more of like a little bit of lore on the Black Lantern and what that really means. I like the foreshadowing of it, for sure. And like I said, it hooked me immediately. As soon as they started talking about the Blackest Night, I'm in. So I want to read that run now because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Rage of the Red Lanterns is the immediate proceeding issues.
Okay.
Like they show the Green Lanterns are transporting Sinestro to go meet the death penalty, and the Red Lanterns get involved, and it's pretty sick. It's a perfect follow-up to this story.
Straight up.
Yeah. All right. Well, sweet. So, I mean, loosely give it a score. What do you feel? Out of 10, what do you think about Sinestro Corps War?
That's tough. My ratings on comic books aren't super honed in, I guess is the best way to put it, because I don't really have like a reference to go to, and so I don't remember what I've even rated the last ones. I would put this a low 8, maybe a flat 8.
Me too. Yeah, that's exactly.
I had issues with it, but there was a lot of good stuff in it too, and I loved a lot of aspects of it. And it was entertaining. The biggest part, I was able to read 5 issues in a row without being bored of it, which doesn't always happen for me with events. It takes me a lot longer. So once I finally, like the last 4 issues, I think, last 4 or 5, I cooked through in one morning, and I typically don't read 5 at once. So, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right, well, let's sign off, but I do want to mention that James Gunn's freaking Green Lantern's plan. We've heard that Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan are going to be like doing some detective stuff on Earth while they are uncovering a big foreboding mystery. Now, that sounds a lot like the Blackest Night to me, but it could very well just be like Yellow Rings. Maybe we'll see the first Yellow Ring instead. I think it's really early in a movie universe to do Blackest Night, because Blackest Night is tied to a bunch of previous deaths of a ton of different members of the DC continuity. That story would not be what it is without those people having been dead, because there's a big emotional tie and the reactions to Rings on how that works. So I don't see it happening in the DCU anytime soon, but it sure sounds like, you know, they're gonna the mystery they're looking for is gonna be some kind of threatening ring.
That makes
That's my
sense.
guess. If it's not black, maybe yellow.
And regarding to the James Gunn thing that ties into this, one thing I got out of this issue, weirdly, it kind of made me like Guy Gardner, this series. I haven't read much stuff with him. Yeah, okay. I don't have a lot of background on him. All I really know is he's got kind of the stereotypical Brooklyn accent or whatever. He's kind of like the Thing, where he just talks like that. Very stereotypically, very thick-headed dude. But he was still like that in this, but for some reason there's a little more depth to him, and I actually grew to enjoy him every time he showed up. So it kind of makes me curious, because we have Nathan Fillion portraying Guy Gardner in this Superman Legacy movie. So it makes me pretty intrigued to see how he plays him. I know he's not going to be a big part like Hal and Jon Stewart, but I'm curious.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just excited for anything about this Green Lanterns on the big screen. I used to hate Guy Gardner. I really did. He has the corny dialogue, acts really douchey, but I have grown to like him. He's kind of a lighthearted, he's a good guy, just has a weird Brooklyn attitude that can be annoying on the surface, but once you get to know him, you actually realize he's a good guy. So Nathan Fillion's gonna kill it. I think he's a good match to be that funny, snarky kind of character. Probably not the most powerful or the most productive or the smartest, but I think that works out really well.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, that's our review of the Sinestro Corps War. Thanks for tuning in. Check out our other stuff, comic reviews. We even did a farewell to the DCEU episode, ranking all 16 movies and doing other categories like best fights, best emotional moments, stuff like that. Farewell to the DCEU. Long live the DCE. Sorry, long live the DCU. Confusing. Anyway, thanks again. We'll see you next time.